Ife, look at me. Look at me. You think this is over because they caught two boys with a gun? You think handcuffs will change what I know? I do not regret it. Do you hear me? I do not regret one single thing.
Ma'am, please.
If they let go of my hands right now, Ife, I would finish the job myself. With my own hands, because you do not deserve what you have. Any of it, the husband, the promotion, the car.
Ma'am, you need to calm down.
The way my own mother looks at you like you fell from heaven.
Ma'am, calm down.
I deserve it. I earned it. I bled for it. And you simply smiled and prayed and took it from me like it was owned to you. Nobody took anything from you, Simi. Everybody took everything from me. And I do not regret trying to end it. I regret that it failed. That is the only thing I regret.
Let's go. Silence.
If someone smiles at you every single day, prays with you every morning, and calls you her sister, does that mean she loves you? Before you answer that question, listen to what happened to me. Because the same woman who held my hand through my worst days is the same woman who once stood in a restroom, dialed a number in Yoruba, and calmly told two men where to find my car. She didn't know I understood every single word. My name is Ifeoluwa. This is not a fairy tale. This is what happened to me in Lagos, Nigeria, in a story I never imagined I would live to tell. Stay with me till the end, because what happened at that celebration will shock you the same way it shocked everyone who was there that night. If you love stories about betrayal, loyalty, and the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be destroyed, subscribe to this channel because we tell stories like this every week. Now, let's begin. I did not grow up in a home filled with laughter. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Okonjo, loved each other once, but by the time I was 6 years old, their marriage had become a battlefield. Every night carried shouting. Every morning carried silence. I remember hiding under my study table once, covering my ears, wishing the walls of our house in Yaba could simply swallow the noise whole. It was my father's older brother, a wealthy businessman named Chief Babatunde Ojo, who finally stepped in. He owned a chain of logistics companies across Lagos and Ibadan, and he had no patience for what the constant fighting was doing to a child's spirit. One quiet Sunday afternoon, he sat my parents down and told them plainly that he would be taking me to live with him and his own children, not to separate a family, but to protect one child's peace of mind while the adults sorted out their own war. I did not want to go. I cried. I begged. But looking back now, I understand that leaving that house was the first decision that saved my life. Though, it would take almost 20 years for me to realize just how true that was. Uncle Babatunde's house in Ikoyi was nothing like what I was used to. It ran like a small institution. He had 4 children of his own, and he treated me exactly like a fifth. Every weekday, after regular school, private tutors arrived at the house, one for French, one for further mathematics, one for public speaking, and, most memorably, a soft-spoken but firm woman named Madam Yewande who taught us Yoruba, and an equally strict man named Master Chukwemeka who taught us Igbo. Language is not decoration. Uncle Babatunde used to say, standing in the doorway with his arms folded while we struggled through vocabulary drills. One day, language will do for you what money cannot. I hated it. I hated all of it. While other children in the estate were riding bicycles outside, laughing under the street lights, I was conjugating Yoruba verbs and repeating Igbo greetings until my tongue ached. I remember writing in my diary at 12 years old that I wished, more than anything, that I could go back to my own parents' house, fights and all, just to escape the discipline of my uncle's home. Even self-defense was not spared. Every Saturday morning, a retired army instructor came to teach us basic hand-to-hand defense techniques in the compound's boys' quarters, how to break free from a grip, how to fall without injury, how to strike where it mattered most. I complained endlessly. My cousins complained too. Uncle Babatunde never once explained why he insisted on all of it. He simply said, "You will thank me later." I did not believe him. Not then. By the time I gained admission into the University of Lagos to study banking and finance, I had grown into a young woman my uncle's discipline had quietly built hardworking, composed, fluent in 3 languages beyond English, and, without fully realizing it, someone who noticed things other people missed. I graduated with a first-class degree, and within 3 months, I was offered a position at one of the most prestigious investment banks in the country, an institution I will simply call Trust Corp Merchant Bank, on Marina Road, Lagos Island. I had no idea that walking into that glass building on my first day would introduce me to the woman who would one day try to have me killed. Her name was Similoluwa. Everyone called her Simi. She was assigned to the same investment marketing unit as me, both of us fresh relationship officers thrown into a department known across the bank for its fierce, almost gladiatorial competition. In that department, every single client a relationship officer brought in added points to a running performance score. At the end of the financial year, whoever sat at the very top of that scoreboard did not just receive a bonus, she received a transformation, a brand new luxury SUV, a fully furnished executive apartment on the island, a dramatic salary increase, an all expenses paid international leadership program, and, most importantly, the coveted title of Executive Relationship Manager, making her one of the youngest executives the bank had ever produced. Everybody wanted it. Nobody talked about anything else in that department. Simi and I became close almost instantly. We sat 2 desks apart, and within our first month, we were inseparable. We attended client meetings together, ate lunch together in the small canteen behind the building, prayed together every morning before resumption, and traveled together whenever marketing assignments took us outside Lagos. Within a year, colleagues stopped introducing us as co-workers. They called us sisters. Simi was generous in a way that disarmed me completely. When my salary was delayed for 2 months during my first year, she quietly paid for my transportation without ever mentioning it again. When my youngest cousin fell sick and needed hospital bills settled urgently, Simi handed me an envelope before I even finished explaining the situation, waving off every attempt at repayment. She often invited me to her family house in Surulere, where her parents treated me like a second daughter. Her mother once told me, laughing over a pot of stew, "I keep telling this girl I wish I had 2 of her." I laughed with them. I had no idea that laughter was sitting on top of something dark. It was Simi, in fact, who introduced me to my husband. His name was Oluwaseun Bankole, a soft-spoken structural engineer who had grown up in the same Surulere neighborhood as Simi's family. She brought him to one of her family gatherings, clearly hoping something would grow between them. But somehow, across that noisy compound filled with jollof rice and laughter, it was to me that Son kept returning with conversation. Within 8 months, he proposed. I did not fully understand, at the time, what that moment cost Simi. She smiled through my introduction to her family, smiled through my wedding planning, smiled through the wedding itself, standing beside me as my chief bridesmaid in a lace gown that matched mine. It was only much later, sitting across from investigators, that she admitted the truth that she had liked Son first, that watching him fall in love with me instead had planted something cold and quiet inside her chest, something she buried under every smile she gave me for years afterward. I never saw it. I loved her too much to look for it. As the years passed, Simi and I grew into 2 of the department's strongest relationship officers, but we built our success in completely different ways. I believed, the way my uncle had raised me to believe, that trust was built slowly and honestly. I studied every investment product until I understood it better than the brochures explained it. I sat with clients, many of them older men and women who had worked their whole lives to save what little they had, and I walked them through every risk, every benefit, refusing to oversell anything just to inflate my numbers. Progress was slow, but the clients I brought in stayed. They referred their friends, they referred their children. An elderly widow named Missos Adebimpe once held my hand in her sitting room and told me I reminded her of the daughter she lost years earlier. I did not chase numbers, I chased trust, and the numbers followed on their own. Simi grew impatient, watching her figures rise more slowly than she wanted. One evening, over drinks after a long marketing trip to Abuja, she told me, half joking, half serious, that she had discovered a faster way to close big investors. I did not understand what she meant until much later. She had begun forming relationships with wealthy male clients that went far beyond banking, using intimacy to secure multi-million naira investment commitments. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself the sacrifice would be worth it once the promotion arrived. Every successful deal convinced her further that she deserved to win more than anyone else in that department because, in her mind, she was sacrificing more than the rest of us combined. By the time the annual performance review approached, Simi's investment figures looked spectacular on paper. Almost everyone in the department assumed she would win the promotion. I assumed it too, and I told her honestly that I was happy for her, that she deserved it after everything she had sacrificed to get there, though, of course, I had no idea what everything truly meant. What none of us realized was that Trust Corp's compliance and executive committee had quietly changed their evaluation criteria that year. It was no longer simply about the volume of money brought in. They now weighed client retention, long-term portfolio performance, customer satisfaction surveys, ethical conduct reports, and teamwork evaluations from colleagues and support staff. My clients, slow and steady as they had always been, showed the strongest retention and satisfaction scores in the entire department. Several had written unsolicited letters praising my professionalism. During the final executive review meeting, the panel unanimously selected me as the department's overall best performer for the year. I remember standing in that boardroom, hands shaking, as the chief operating officer announced my name. I remember thanking God first, then my colleagues, and specifically thanking Simi in front of everyone, crediting her friendship and support for keeping me steady through the most difficult year of my career. Everyone in that room applauded, everyone except one person, smiling so widely that nobody noticed her eyes had gone completely cold. I received everything the promotion promised, the title of Executive Relationship Manager, a brand new SUV parked proudly in the bank's executive bay, a beautifully furnished apartment on the island, a dramatic salary increase, and a scheduled leadership program in London the following quarter. For weeks, I floated through each day in quiet gratitude, completely unaware that gratitude was the last thing anyone around me was feeling. It was an ordinary Thursday evening, almost 3 weeks after the announcement, when everything changed. Most of the department had already left for the day. I had stayed behind to finish a client file, working quietly at my desk in the far corner of the office, mostly hidden behind a tall filing cabinet. Simi, believing she was alone, walked to the small break area near the stairwell and made a phone call. She spoke in Yoruba. I froze the moment I recognized her voice, low and urgent, giving precise instructions to whoever was on the other end of that call. She described my car, the silver SUV, the license plate, the usual route I took home along Amadu Bello Way. She told them exactly where to wait that evening. And then, in words I will never forget as long as I live, she told them, calmly, in the language my uncle had once forced me to learn against my will, not to make any mistakes, because she wanted the matter finished that same night. I did not move. I did not breathe loudly. Every self-defense lesson, every Yoruba vocabulary drill, every hour I had once resented as a child suddenly made sense to me in a single terrifying moment. I understood every single word she spoke, and she had absolutely no idea. When she finished the call and walked back toward the office as though nothing had happened, I forced my face into the same warm smile I always gave her. We left the building together that evening exactly as we always did, laughing about something trivial from earlier in the day. But inside, my mind was working faster than it ever had in my life. Simi offered to drop me home first, as she often did, before continuing to her own house in Surulere. I agreed, the same way I always did, and settled into the passenger seat while she pulled out of the bank's parking garage. Halfway through our usual route, I told her I needed to make a quick stop at a small provision store along a different road, claiming I had forgotten to buy something for the house. She frowned slightly, but agreed without suspicion, turning the car down an unfamiliar street instead of our usual path along Amadu Bello Way. I do not know, even now, how I managed to keep my voice steady while giving her those directions. But somewhere along that detour, two men sat waiting patiently in a parked car at the exact location she had described, watching every vehicle that passed, waiting for a silver SUV that never arrived. Later, during interrogation, those same men would admit that they waited for nearly 3 hours that night before finally giving up and calling Simi, furious, accusing her of wasting both their time and the advance payment she had already given them. She apologized repeatedly on that call, promising them another opportunity very soon, insisting that next time her target would not escape. I did not know the details of that particular conversation until much later, but I knew without any doubt that whatever had failed that night would not be the last attempt. That night, after Simi dropped me at my gate and drove away smiling, waving through her window as though the evening had been perfectly ordinary, I sat with my husband, Sion, at our dining table and told him everything I had heard. He did not react with panic. He reacted with the same steady calm that had first drawn me to him. "We are not confronting her directly," he said quietly. "Not yet. Not until we have something no lawyer, no family connection, and no amount of money can erase." The following morning, Seun reached out to a family friend, a senior police officer named ACP Gbenga Adeyanju, a man who had once mentored under my uncle years earlier during a community security initiative in Ikoyi. When I explained what had happened, ACP Adeyanju listened without interrupting, taking careful notes before finally saying words I will never forget. "If what you are telling me is true, then this woman will try again. We simply need to be ready when she does." Over the following days, quiet arrangements were made. My phone was fitted with proper recording safeguards. A small, discreet security detail began monitoring my movements without ever announcing their presence. And I continued behaving exactly as I always had, smiling with Simi at work, attending lunch with her, laughing at her jokes, praying beside her every single morning, giving no indication whatsoever that I now understood the full weight of what she was planning. It was, without question, the hardest performance of my entire life. A week later, Simi announced she was organizing a celebration at an upscale lounge on Victoria Island, a beautiful rooftop space called Cardinal Lounge, to formally thank God and appreciate everyone who had supported her career that year. She insisted, with what appeared to be genuine warmth, that I absolutely had to attend. Despite everything I now knew, some small part of me still hoped there was good buried somewhere beneath the woman I had once considered a sister. I attended. The evening unfolded exactly like every other celebration I had attended with her over the years. Laughter, music, expensive drinks, colleagues taking photographs against the lounge's skyline view. Halfway through the event, Simi excused herself toward the restroom. I had noticed over the previous week a particular pattern in her behavior, a tendency to disappear briefly whenever her phone rang from an unfamiliar number. That evening, something in the way she gripped her phone as she walked away told me this would not be an ordinary restroom break. I followed her quietly, slipping into the restroom moments after she entered, hidden inside a separate stall. Through the thin partition, I heard her dial a number and once again speak in Yoruba, her voice low but unmistakably urgent. She gave the assassins the lounge's exact address. She told them I was inside, that they needed to arrive immediately, and that tonight, above all nights, there could be no mistakes. With trembling hands, I held up my phone and recorded every single word. Minutes after Simi returned to the celebration, smiling as though nothing had happened, two unfamiliar men entered the lounge, scanning the crowd with the kind of tense focus that had no business belonging to a joyful celebration. Before either of them could move further into the room, undercover police officers who had been quietly stationed around the lounge for the past hour closed in. The confrontation was tense but brief. Both men were arrested without any casualties, their weapons recovered before they ever reached their intended target. Guests screamed, chairs scattered, and the celebratory music that had been playing only moments earlier cut into stunned silence. During interrogation later that night, the two men confessed almost immediately once confronted with phone records connecting them directly to Simi. They admitted they had been hired weeks earlier for an assassination that had already failed once, on a night when their intended target had unexpectedly changed her route home. When investigators played my recording from the restroom, confirming Simi's voice, giving the lounge's location, confirming my presence inside, there was no argument left for her to make. She was arrested in front of the very colleagues, family members, and friends who had gathered that evening to celebrate her. I watched as the woman I once called my sister was led out of Cardinal Lounge in handcuffs, her elegant gown catching the lounge's golden lighting one final time. During formal questioning, years of buried resentment finally broke loose from Simi all at once. She screamed that she deserved the promotion more than anyone else, that she had sacrificed her body, her dignity, and her own sense of self-worth, while I had simply smiled, prayed, and walked honestly, receiving everything she believed rightfully belonged to her. She admitted, through tears investigators later described as somewhere between rage and grief, that she had hated watching someone who always did things the right way receive blessing after blessing, that she felt she had worked far harder to earn. She confessed that every act of kindness I had shown her over the years, every prayer we said together, every gift she gave my family, every smile she offered at my wedding had only deepened her jealousy, because it reminded her again and again that she could never quite become the kind of person people genuinely, effortlessly loved. She was formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder, along with the two men she had hired. The case drew significant attention across Lagos, not only because of the brutality of the betrayal, but because of how narrowly it had been prevented twice. I think about my uncle often now, about those endless Yoruba drills I resented as a child, the vocabulary lists I complained about, the self-defense lessons I considered a waste of my Saturday mornings. I think about how firmly he insisted, without ever explaining why, that those lessons would matter one day. He was right. Those lessons did not just teach me a language, they saved my life. I have also learned something harder to accept, that not everyone who smiles at your victories is genuinely celebrating them with you. Betrayal rarely arrives wearing an obvious mask. Sometimes it sits beside you at lunch. Sometimes it prays with you every morning. Sometimes it stands beside you at your own wedding, smiling in every photograph while quietly burying something far darker underneath. I do not say this to make anyone suspicious of every friendship they hold dear. Most friendships are genuine. Most people celebrating your success truly mean it. But I have learned to pay closer attention, not with fear, but with wisdom, to the difference between someone who is happy for you and someone who has simply learned to hide that they are not. If there is one thing I want anyone watching this to take from my story, it is this. Integrity may feel slower than shortcuts. Honesty may feel less rewarding in the short term than the fast, glittering paths others seem to take. But success built patiently on truth will always outlast success built on deception. And envy, left unchecked long enough, does not only destroy the person it is aimed at, it eventually destroys the person carrying it too. If this story touched you, please leave a comment below and let us know what part shocked you the most. Like this video, subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss what we share next. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay wise, stay discerning, and never underestimate the quiet power of what you were taught to endure. At the end,